Public Affairs programming on WQPT is brought to you by the Singh Group at Merrill Lynch, serving the wealth management needs of clients in the region for over 25 years.
Iowa lawmakers end their 2018 session with landmark decisions. Where does the state go from here? And a half-century of Project Now, trying to help those who may go forgotten in the cities. It is the second of 2 years in the Iowa legislature completely controlled by Republicans. Democrats lost control of the House in 2012. Republicans won control of the state Senate and the entire legislature in 2016. This week, Senate Majority Leader Jack Whitver told his colleagues the legislature adjourns with members able to go home to their districts and tell their constituents that they kept their word, honored their commitment to them, and produced historic results. And joining us are the heads of the two major political parties in Scott County. We have Linda Greenlee, who's the chair of the Scott County Republican Central Committee. Tom Hart is the chair of the Democratic Party in Scott County. Thank you both for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
I would assume we have very different takes on what the Iowa legislature did. Let me start with you. As a Republican, were all the promises fulfilled?
Well, I think so, or to the best of their ability, you know, and you never get everything perfect.
Was the most significant issue in your mind the tax reform bill that the Iowa legislature approved, or would you say it was the fetal heartbeat bill that came down towards the very end of the session?
Well, I think it would be the tax bill. Because we're just trying to even it out. The federal bill would, of course, if you deducted that federal tax from your state, you would be paying higher taxes because of that. So I think that's my major one. I was surprised at the fetal. I'm happy with it because, you know, a heartbeat is a heartbeat. I mean, it's alive. My husband just went through heart surgery, and they took him off of it and put him on a temporary heartbeat. So if that's the case, he could have been dead for a time being, or killing dead. So I just feel that that was a good way of putting it, solving the problem in some respects on the issue. So.
Well, and Tom, as Democrats, I mean, you weren't standing on the sidelines, but when you don't have control of either house of the legislature nor the governorship, there is a whole lot that you cannot do.
Right. I think one of the Republicans described the session as historic, and I would agree with that. But I think it's historic in a very negative way. The hole that they've blown in the budget, there are 3 times in the last 25 years that we've had to borrow or we've missed estimates. It was 2008 with the recession and the last 2 years. We have a huge budget problem. They've made it worse with this tax cut. They are underfunding education. The average family will get less than $2 a week in tax relief. This is crazy.
Now, the second part, of course, is the social agenda, and the fetal heartbeat bill that was passed has been signed into law. You're expecting that totally to be challenged by the courts and perhaps, what, upheld or dismissed?
Well, under current law, it's illegal. I mean, the Supreme Court is very clear on this. What they're trying to do is play to their base. They never campaigned on it. You didn't see it in any of the brochures 2 or 4 years ago, never campaigned, but they're trying to serve it up to the Supreme Court. It'll cost hundreds of thousands of dollars to defend. I just think it's so inappropriate, and it's the most radical legislation in the country.
Is it the touchstone issue, though, for November for Democrats?
I don't think it's the touchstone. I think that the budget is a huge one. $32 million they gave additionally to education, over $60 million for the tax program. The hole in the budget in 5 years, by their own estimates, in 5 years is $750 million. That is just nuts.
And where do you go from there? Tax cuts, of course, are very popular. The Republicans are pointing out that it is a $2.7 billion cut over the next 6 years, expecting a 10% average tax reduction. That's the way the Republicans are selling it. But the question is, we've seen the budget constraints, we've seen how difficult it is to balance the budget in Iowa. Is this a responsible move? It's a popular move, but is it responsible for state government?
Well, if you put more money in Iowa pocketbooks, they'll spend more money, and then when they spend money, they get taxes from the state, you know, your state tax. So that's got to put some more money in the coffin. I don't understand if Iowa is rated #1 by U.S. News and education, healthcare, infrastructure, which I was surprised at, and some other areas. So if we're rated #1, we must be doing something right.
And is that going to be pretty much the Republican statement as you're going into the election? Don't change the course, look how good things are?
Yes, I'm sure they'll probably be saying that. We're going in the right direction. Let's keep going that way.
The latest budget bill, though, has once again targeted the public universities. They're taking a large hit once again, Iowa State, Iowa, Northern Iowa. Does it concern you about the future of postgraduate education in Iowa, which used to be stellar? And if you think about it, in the Midwest, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Iowa, so well known for their public universities, and they seem to be getting hit a lot.
Well, look at the public universities and see how much building they're doing on there. If you've been to Iowa City lately, it's a whole different ballpark than it was of maybe 10 years ago. The other thing you got to think about is Future Ready program that's coming up too. I mean, that is working with community colleges and schools so that we can get more people working in areas that maybe don't need college education. They'll be given a certificate, which if you're somebody young and you got a certificate that'll get you a job, that's awesome to me.
Well, Tom Hart, the Future Ready program got great bipartisan support.
Right.
The goal is 70% of Iowa workers get post-high school education by 2025. Democrats, though, have said, but where's the funding for this whole thing?
Well, that's right. You know, the rhetoric is good on water quality, on mental health, on community college, but the funding isn't there. So it's good rhetoric, but I believe your priorities ought to match the budget, and the dollars aren't there. You know, you want to talk about ratings, Linda. U.S. News and World Report, we're rated 49th on delivery of mental health. We have abandoned the mentally ill in this state, and our jails, our prisons are full of people that are mentally ill because we've basically cut off services.
Well, let's talk a little bit more about that, because one of the things the legislature did approve was mental health reform with 6 regional access centers that spread throughout the state and more community treatment teams, almost like first responders for mental health. You see that as a success. I mean, the Republicans are saying, look, we are moving towards a better mental health system in Iowa.
Well, it's a process, you know, with mental health and with health issues too. The telehealth that's coming in should help them too, because if you can get on a computer and you can read the symptoms, you're better able to predict what's going to be happening. I think opening the doors so that people can get to the right areas if they need to. I mean, I know that some people probably haven't got any place to go because they live in a small community, way out in Timbuktu, and to get to services is tough. So being able to use something like the telehealth, or being able to have a facility available to them in their area instead of having to go clear across the state to get to something that would help them.
Well, Tom, you've seen Obamacare all but gutted in Iowa. I mean, are you worried about
systematically and strategically gutted?
And so where do you see
and the huge impact of that is on the more rural areas of the community. You know, a community like the Quad Cities, we have excellent health care. It has an impact here, but it's really on smaller communities. You know, 40 years ago, I was on the Board of Supervisors in Scott County. We won national awards on our mental health delivery. We still have a better mental health delivery system than much of the rest of the state. But in other parts of the state, this is a disaster, and we have the jails full of the mentally ill to prove that.
Let's talk about the state of Iowa itself. You guys are both political animals. You know what's going on throughout the state, especially in our area. And Tom, let me start with you. Is Iowa still a purple state? It seems very Republican right now.
Significantly Republican with Democratic spots, but significantly Republican in 2016. But Iowans are usually pretty open and fair. We'll see where this goes. I mean, when I started out in this 50 years ago, it was a very Republican state. We had decades of Republican governors. So I think Iowa's a swing state, continues to be a swing state.
Do you see that Republicans are overly comfortable? I mean, when you take a look at what's going on, 59 Republicans in the House to 41 Democrats, the Senate, 29 Republicans to 20 Democrats. Those are pretty healthy majorities for Republicans.
You never go that way. You always think of winning, what you have to do to win. You never look back at your successes all the time. You look forward to your possible future successes. Never rest on your honors or glories type thing.
Mm-hmm.
Always.
So what is it going to take for you to rebuild the Republican Party even stronger? Or are you pretty, well, I don't want to say you're satisfied with the way it is, but every race is contested.
Yes, well, and that's good. I mean, competition is always good. It makes you sharper and keeps you appraised of everything that's going on. If you rest on your laurels, sometimes you get too confident, overly confident, and sometimes you lose that way.
Is it an issue of qualified candidates for the Democrats? Because we now, like you said, or like I said, is both houses of the legislature, the governors, both U.S. senators, a vast majority of the congressional delegation?
Well, and remember 12 years ago, we had both houses of the legislature and the governor's mansion in Iowa. So this swings. Iowa's a swing state. It swings. There are good eras for Republicans, bad eras for Republicans, good eras for Democrat and bad. This went heavily against us in 16. And I think much of what was enacted in this legislative session is an overreach. They enacted stuff they never campaigned on. They had very little public access, public hearings, did it often in the middle of the night or the wee hours of the morning. I think it's overreach, and I think people don't like that.
What to the extent do you think national politics will play coming up in November for the Iowa elections? Tom, what's the Trump factor?
Well, I think there is a factor, but you know, Tip O'Neill said many years ago, all politics is local, and I believe that. I think ultimately it is all local. You know, the national scene is always a factor, but ultimately I think it's on a local, which is why you see Scott County more blue, more Democratic than much of the rest of the state.
Well, and Linda, the same question for you as well. I mean, I think some people thought that you would see more candidates running away from Donald Trump, but you take a look at some of the primaries that were going on nationwide earlier this week. Is there a Trump factor in Iowa?
Well, there is to a certain extent. I mean, he's winning, he's doing things that people in their back of their mind have said, I wish they do. Mm-hmm. And he's accomplishing things that most of the candidates or politicians haven't done before. So, I mean, it makes a difference. I think that Iowa is going to be a race that we should watch because I think more money's coming in from the Democrats than there is from the Republicans, and what I've heard.
Let me ask you about Scott County in particular, because Clinton won Scott County, of course, but only 48 to 46%.
Yeah.
That was a pretty narrow victory for a Democrat in Scott County. Do you think that was more of a swing towards Republicans in Scott County, or just more people, I don't want Hillary Clinton?
Well, that's partially true. I mean, from when I was door knocking, I was hearing it was, I don't want Hillary. So I'm not sure that that's the answer to voting, for your reason in voting,
right.
I think, but that was what I was hearing.
But Tom, do you see, I'm sorry.
I'll tell you something else.
Sure.
When I was door knocking, the people that normally said to me, I never vote, but this time I am. So it was like, really, you know, why didn't you vote before? And maybe we wouldn't be in the situation that we're in. But. So,
Tom, is 2016 just an aberration, or do you think you know, that people were just upset with Hillary Clinton?
I think it goes way beyond Hillary Clinton. I do think that was a factor, but I think people are upset with the political process and the inability to solve problems. We have a different approach to politics today than 30 years ago when I was in elective office. where you try to forge consensus, you try to bring your peers along to what the community wants. Today it's much more about division. How do we divide this? How do we conquer this? Which is really what I think the fetal heartbeat bill is. It's all about division. It's not about bringing people together.
I'm going to have to leave it at that. Linda Greenlee from Scott County Republicans, Tom Hart, Scott County Democrats. Thank you both for joining us. It's going to be an interesting political year, but name a political year that isn't interesting, right?
Thanks, Jim.
Thank you.
Still ahead, marking a half-century of helping our neighbors in need. But first, Laura Adams takes a look at events around the area in this first week of May. It's time for Out and About.
This is Out and About from May 7th through 13th. Hi, I'm Laura Adams. Join WQPT for a free sneak peek at the new masterpiece production of Little Women, adapted from the beloved Louisa May Alcott novel, coming May 12th to the Moline Public Library. Or join the celebration at the 65th Beaux Arts Spring Fair at the Figge Art Museum. Admission to the fair and museum is free. Come visit the Broadway Historic District for their annual Mother's Day tour of homes. And the German American Heritage Center is opening a new exhibit titled Steam Circus, The Colorful World of Carousels. Or help the East Moline Library raise funds for the new library building by attending a family-friendly evening of bingo with prizes, food, and a silent auction. Schwiebert Park is the location of the Bike Rodeo. It includes a bike inspection station, safety checks, and a slow race. Faith Lutheran Church in Moline hosts 50 vendors at their Spring Craft and Vendor Show on the 12th. It's a Mystery presents the last two shows of their season, 5-Card Murder and Teach Me How to Murder at Skellington Manor. Reservations required. While the Quad City Wind Ensemble performs pieces by Bernstein, Copeland, and others at Galvin Fine Arts Center. And the Speakeasy is holding a fundraiser titled It's a Girl Thing, a Feminine Perspective, benefiting Winnie's Place and Bethany Home for Children and Families, with vendor booths and free appetizers. For more information, visit wqpt.org.
Thank you, Laura. Tony Hepner is a mainstay in the music scene in the cities. Tony joined us at the Black Box Theater in Moline to perform another of his many original songs. Here's Tony with Chasing Memories.
Heading down to New Orleans, searching for a warmer dream. Winter months are way too hard on me. Nothing keeping me around, besides I'm wearing down. Perhaps a change will do me good. All my friends have gone away, I guess they're still okay. I'll be leaving sometime next day. Driving down to Champaign to catch the late night train. I'll be on the bayou when the sunrise comes again. Just chasing memories of you. Was the time I loved it here, somehow it's disappeared, just like the leaves of summer's past. Wonder why those days are gone, somehow I can't go on, knowing there's nothing here for me. All my friends have gone away, I guess they're still okay. I'll be leaving sometime next day. Driving down to Champaign, catch the late night train. I'll be on the bayou when the sunrise comes again. Chasing memories of you. chasing memories of you.
Tony Hepner with Chasing Memories. It was a turbulent time in the nation and in the Quad Cities. In 1968, the social fabric was being stretched in dramatic ways. Protests against the war, assassinations of Martin Luther King Jr. and Robert Kennedy, and Lyndon Johnson's Great Society legislation was just starting to mature. Well, that's the era when Project Now was born in the Quad Cities, and now 50 years later, Project Now has itself matured. And joining us is the executive director of Project Now, Maureen Hart. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Jim.
Kind of a novel idea in 1968. It was all part of that social fabric, social programs trying to help our neighbors who are less fortunate.
Absolutely, and the community really came together and really demanded change. And with the legislation in 1964, the Economic Opportunity Act, then the community action agencies sprung up across America. And every county in America, I think 99% of the counties have a community action agency that works on their behalf.
And 50 years later, though, I mean, you're needed more than ever before. So one would say, well, wait a second, this great experiment hasn't worked.
I disagree. I think it has worked. It's still working. I think society would be way worse without these programs. And sometimes you don't even recognize it because people take it for granted. And they don't know what it would look like without programs to help people. People who are reaching out for help. Well, and that want to improve their situation, and that's critical too.
We're talking about how important it is for a society to have a safety net for people, either they're elderly or they're of lower income or they've just hit bad breaks right now.
Right.
I mean, that safety net is something that I think America has really learned that there is a role to do this.
I absolutely agree.
Let's talk about, I mean, when we're looking at how you guys started, in the 1970s, Head Start, Senior Meals, LIHEAP, all of that was coming together. Low Income Heating Energy Assistance Program is LIHEAP, which works for both winter and summer, which I always think you want to point out.
Right.
That was where you really did start. Senior Meals, Head Start, kids, and the elderly. I mean, that was really an important thing to launch in the late 60s, early 70s.
Definitely. So working on multiple fronts. You know, poverty isn't just one issue. You know, this is what's wrong, let's fix it. It's things on multiple fronts sometimes that need to come together to help a family really succeed.
And then in the 1980s, it kind of expanded. Then you got into small businesses.
Yes.
Housing, I'm sorry, that's the 90s. Homeless assistance, employment training. You could just see the expansion for other people in need.
That's exactly right. You know, that entrepreneurial spirit, very much, you know, working with small businesses and loan programs, and that was very successful for a long time.
And it was really critically important too, because as we now know, so many jobs are created through the small businesses.
That's right.
And you really do sometimes need, not every idea gets funded easily, and so you do need a little boost there every now and then.
Definitely.
1980s we go to, and then we have homeless assistance, wait, I did that again. 1990s, daycare, housing rehab, affordable apartments in the 1990s. You really went into the housing area in the 1990s, did you not?
Yes, affordable housing is still a critical need. It was then, it is now. People don't have the income to pay the market rate rents. And they can be working full-time, working hard, and they can't afford that. So we offer apartments at affordable rates, and there's more of it needed, of course, than we can provide. We provide maybe around 90 units. Well, there's a lot of people that need housing, affordable housing.
And then since then, I know one of you just keep adding decade after decade, but now weatherization is such a huge deal, because once these people get into housing, I mean, it's such a huge chunk of your paycheck if you're getting a good paycheck anyhow.
Right, so the housing stock around here is old, right? Insulation needs to be, houses need to be tightened so the utility bills can be kept in check. And furnaces break and people have trouble with that. So the weatherization component, that actually started, I think, in the 70s, but it's become much more sophisticated.
It has.
Yeah, and it's really neat what you can do with a home these days to tighten it.
So when you look at Project Now over the last 50 years, what are you most proud of?
I think it's just so, I think it's so community-based. and it's close to our customer, and doing our best to meet the needs. Mm-hmm. So I think the breadth of services is just unparalleled.
And your ability to have expanded, because I think a lot of people might just think it's a Rock Island County agency, and it's not.
No, it's Rock Island, Henry, and Mercer counties. And another thing we started offering within the last 8 years or so is RIM, rural public transit. So kind of the metro link of the rural areas, and we're the operator of that. So that's been a new venture too.
Because let's be honest, rural poverty is sometimes one of the great great things that people ignore or don't even know exists. And so that was really critically important for you, was it not? Is to get out of the city and into the country area?
Well, I think that what's important to us is address issues of poverty, and that's not just found in the cities. That's found in the rural areas as well.
Yeah. And because of the distance, it can be easily, you don't go there. And to be able to provide that service is a big benefit to, like you said, Mercer, Henry County.
Right.
Let me know a little bit about what you're planning on doing to celebrate, because 50 years is worth celebration for Project Now.
Right. So in May is Community Action Month across America. And we're taking proclamations declaring May Community Action Month to the cities and counties that we work with. So that's been fun to do.
Yeah, right.
And we are planning a broader community-based celebration in September, the first part of September, the 7th. And so that will be an outright celebration. But right now we're just bringing awareness to the programs and to the issues surrounding poverty in our area.
And we had a great deal of problems for Project Now and other social agencies when the state of Illinois government wasn't funding, and you had to suspend programs for a short period of time.
Right.
What do you see for the future there? Because Illinois isn't in that much better of a financial shape. It really showed how tenuous the funding can be too, when the state government can pull back like that, and how it impacts you almost immediately.
Right, and we came through that, but what was most troubling then was just the uncertainty and the timing of things, because how long can you offer services when money doesn't flow? So we made it through that phase, and that's, as long as there's people voting on your money, and it's never clear cut. It's
not a sure thing, but do you think things are better now than it was 2015, 2016 some of your worst years?
I don't tend to put it in terms of better and worse.
Yeah.
Because as soon as you say that, maybe I'm superstitious.
Knock on glass, right?
Knock on glass.
There you go.
And then sometimes you get used to dealing with the dysfunction.
Right.
So I'm not sure how much things change or how much you become more immune to it.
Well, congratulations on 50 years. I know that you want to celebrate with your workers and many of the volunteers. I mean, it really is a people organization, obviously, and you've got an incredible staff.
I agree. I couldn't agree more.
Maureen Hart, thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate it. Happy 50th.
Thanks.
Such a nice organization. Now, if you're a college student or if you know one who loves television, make sure they contact us very soon. We're taking applications for our summer-long WQPT Volunteer Ambassadors program. Since 2004, the program has provided students with hands-on television experience in event planning, education, marketing, public affairs, a whole lot more. To apply, just go to WQPT.org and complete the application. The deadline is coming up Friday, May 18th. You can check out the details right now at WQPT.org. On the air, on the radio, on the web, and on your mobile device, thanks for taking some time to join us. We talk about the issues on the cities.
Public Affairs programming on WQPT is brought to you by the Sing Group at Merrill Lynch, serving the wealth management needs of clients in the region for over 25 years.